My fellow countrymen and women, let me on your behalf say a big thank you to our soldiers and service personnel for the reward of the victory of that fateful June 4th. I thank you all, not only for June 4th, but for 31st December as well, which preempted a repetition of another even bloodier June 4th because people felt betrayed by the elite and political leadership at that time. I have chosen to speak less and rather allow the force of observation and the pain of circumstances to serve as a stimulus in awakening all of us from the deep sleep we have fallen into over the past decades. We must be reminded that we are a country born out of difficult situations where some had to toil and shed their blood. The positive disruptive energy, force, and energy of June 4th was not a product of any political movement or action. The spontaneous eruption on that fateful day represented the unadulterated spirit of liberation that was collectively sought after as a nation on the brink of collapse. Nothing more has signified or exemplified the patriotism and resilience of Ghanaians than in those difficult moments. Many were those who sacrificed their lives and livelihoods in order to bequeath to subsequent generations a more just society with equal opportunities for all, irrespective of their religion, tribe, ethnicity, political, or educational status. We must never forget our past, nor erase the memories of where we came from. Commemorations like this allow us to ponder, reflect, and re-examine ourselves, our conduct and policies, and to see if these have properly been aligned to our core values of probity, accountability, integrity, and social justice. The difficult times we faced in the past that propelled the engine of the revolution is almost parallel in hardship with the present era of COVID-19. But the question is, do we have the same mental fortitude and integrity that would enable us to survive the circumstances of today's trials? History, it is often said, repeats itself whenever we refuse to learn, most especially from adversities and volcanic and near bloody eruptions. Most of the speakers before me spoke very well, but I find that General Mosquito's speech is pretty much in line with what I have to say, and I'm grateful for that. We have many dedicated and learned men and women who could provide leadership at various levels to the benefit of this country. The very ordinary people in Ghana are not unwise about issues and developments in this country. We are, however, as a learned group, unable to bring the best out of our people. The inability of our people to communicate with us in the administrative English language puts them at a disadvantage and makes them unable to demand accountability and transparency from us. The spirituality and respect in the language of our culture evokes and demands integrity, accountability, and transparency. This, however, does not and cannot happen because the foreign and colonial language has been used opportunistically to intimidate and promote falsehood and degrade the essence and substance of our being. Had we as a people carried along our integrity and spirituality in our culture, a higher level, beg your pardon, in our culture and language, into the use of the administrative English language, a higher level of integrity would have been prevailing in Ghana and this continent, and the quality of liberation would have enhanced our developmental efforts. The material and immaterial corruption in this country would not have undermined our ability and capabilities to the extent where the authority of truth would have been so badly undermined by the corrupted truth of authority. I picked this up from Sadhguru a few nights ago, and I thought, how splendid. In other words, the authority of truthfulness should not be undermined by the words or supposed truths of those in positions of power or authority. The morality and authority of truth is godly and divine, and it should always supersede and override the truth of the authority of mortals. Ladies and gentlemen, we, in this little Ghana of ours, have so we've mastered the art of untruth in our books, on our radios, on our televisions, and now through the internet, so much so that historical truths and facts are struggling to be recognized. People are paid so much money, corrupt money, to distort and lie about historical truths and facts. Is it any wonder that the precious lessons we should be learning are invariably lost on us, and we end up committing the same blunders over and over? The royal families of France and Russia were executed for their corrupt and unaccountable leadership. The royal families who learned their lessons from France and Russia embarked upon serious democratic reforms, and that is why the royal family of England and other places in Europe have survived. Instead of learning useful lessons from our not too distant past, here in Ghana, where we saw and tasted it live, some have made it their business to corrupt others, to distort and wipe out our history. These people, with selfish, myopic, and wicked motives, have consistently represented a one-sided, a corrupt-sided story of a history that should serve as a guide for the future and ensure that we do not make the same mistakes that led to the eruptions of the past. But no. Where have the distortions taken us? What has the failure to tell the truth done to us? Has it not brought us right back almost to where we started? We have rather belittled the national psyche. We could have been far richer socially, culturally, and economically, but for our negative desire to destroy the inspirational history that could have lifted us onto another pedestal. Ladies and gentlemen, when people shamelessly attempt to erase the truth because they lack scruples, it rather perpetuates a state of corruption that derails all we have achieved while glorifying exploitation, perversion, dishonesty, immorality, and criminality. I have countless examples of the evil actions of some of our elite in perpetuating their own depraved reality. More painful is the fact that while we expect some of these historical distortions to come from our natural opponents, some within our own persistently have decided it was time to join the bandwagon and rewrite the history that birthed our political culture. Ladies and gentlemen, last year I spoke about how the intelligence machinery of the former apartheid regime of South Africa used to pay treacherous black African characters from our countries to continue misbehaving. They served as spies and helped to spread some of the most malicious disinformation. Because the post-apartheid leadership of South Africa has been silent about some of these traitors, they've continued to spread their malice across this continent. And I'm not unaware of one from this country. They're doing a lot of perfidious work. I urge the South Africans to expose these apartheid collaborators, some of whom parade in their countries as patriots after performing these unconscionable things, these extremely repulsive acts. They should give us a break, expose them to shut them up. Ladies and gentlemen, COVID-19. Early this year, the world was struck, as you know, by a pandemic whose effects eventually affected every facet of our lives. Despite the interventions from state institutions to alleviate the plight of the underprivileged, there is still a lot to be done by all of us in our very own communities to support the most vulnerable groups. The health force across the country, some of whom have been infected with the virus, in the line of duty have taught us a sense of purpose, selflessness, commitment, dedication, and patriotism. I commend all health workers, as well as all other frontline workers, for proving equal to the task in this defining moment of ours. Fellow compatriots, we have hurt our own by institutionalizing corruption for far too long, giving a little few the access to amass wealth at the risk of the livelihood of the ordinary people who are languishing in poverty and misery. Ladies and gentlemen, national monuments, groups, events, institutions, and important state assets are labeled after some very deserving individuals to inspire and direct subsequent generations on the good path they must emulate, namely courage, the spirit of patriotism, resilience, and integrity. In some instances, it serves as a crucial reminder for history's defining moments. In Ghana, these actions that certainly influence us are sometimes, unfortunately, taken for granted. And unsurprisingly, some important roads in Accra have been named after undeserving personalities. Such actions, one of which was done purposely to spite the Ghana Armed Forces, is an affront to many. There are many distinguished African figures, such as our own General Erskine, General Akufo, Commodore Boachi Admiral Medume, Colonel Mensah Berima, General Nunu Mensah, who's here with us, General Arnold Queno, Brigadier Alphonse Kojo Carter, Ayikwe Yama, Nigeria's Wole Soyinka and Chinua Achebe, and a couple more who merit such honor. In like manner, another administration, in fact the most offensive administration, desecrated the Kwame Nkrumah mausoleum and rendered it a sheer family cemetery. Ladies and gentlemen, our democracy is born out of fire, and we must dearly and compassionately protect its flames. Let's not leave it to go cold, flame out. One of the key institutional arms of this democratic discourse, from pre-colonial to modern-day Ghana, is the protection of right and choice. We must endeavor as a nation to deepen the spirit of the consultative process, equity, respect for the rule of law, or in simple terms, the tenet of democracy and multi-party democracy. The Electoral Commission, which is the fulcrum of our multi-party democracy, must be supported and protected by all stakeholders to ensure a free and fair election and a peaceful society. That notwithstanding, it is equally important for that revered institution to ensure that the processes leading to this year's elections are done in consultation with the stakeholders of the nation to prevent unnecessary suspicion and promote a peaceful and cohesive society. An election is an event, but building a democratic, free and peaceful society is a process. So the debate surrounding the new voters register must be thoroughly examined so we do not undermine the successes we have chalked so far as a nation. In addition, the constitutional mandate of the Electoral Commission must be respected by all. While we work towards perfecting our electoral process, I urge you all to pursue and sustain our uniqueness as a country in the democratization process. The sanctity of the right of choice is not a matter we can compromise on. That sanctity must be preserved at all costs. And as we inch towards November, let us ensure that the institutional processes are transparent and beyond blemish. Freedom and justice is not abstract. It is very much related to the sanctity of the right of choice. Those who are eligible to exercise that right of choice should not and cannot be disenfranchised by dictates that defeat one's right to vote. The sanctity of justice should be preserved and protected, with all of us being subject to the practice of what is just. An unjust society deepens the iniquities that exist. The patriotic zeal that gave birth to June 4th is one that cannot be extinguished. Any attempt to compromise on the ideals of probity, accountability, and integrity in our everyday lives is an attempt to snuff out the light that was lit 41 years ago. Let us honor the memories of those who laid down their lives liberating Ghana. This has been a fairly short address. There were so many things I was hoping to share with you. Some of the very callous things that happened after I left office, all designed to turn the face of the ship 180 degrees. Disgraceful things. And it took so long. 4 years, another 4 years. And I kept insisting to Professor Mills, please investigate this thing, that one, this one. But no. Some of his handlers decided to make a so-called enemy out of me, and rather decided to carry on that way. See where we are today? The loss we suffered in this last election could have happened, I think, was it in 2012? It would have been one of the most disgraceful losses we'd ever suffered. A party that was not built by Rawlings. It was, the closest to it was probably Nkrumah CPP. It was born out of the people, the revolt of June 4th, 31st PNDC, and then 92 constitutional estate. People have the tendency of calling, I entered democratic rule in 92. And I correct them, I say, no, I didn't enter democratic. Constitutional rule in 92, but democracy started well before then. Yes. It was one of the finest times in our history. We need to talk about this a lot more. Some of the intellectuals in our party have been a real letdown. They'll open their mouths. I don't hear much coming out of their mouths. Just a handful of them. They should boldly draw the picture for you to see. How many of you have actually asked yourself, despite the campaign, an American administration, one after the other, going out of her territory, her borders, to go and fight socialist governments, communist governments. A man emerges in their midst at this late hour, professed to be a socialist, and has so much of the youth supporting him. When I saw this, I was asking, Americans thinking, do they realize what is happening in their country? I think you would want me to continue, wouldn't you? No. I'll give you people a break. We'll meet again. I thank you very much. not even the so-called socialists here, have ever bothered to school, educate Ghanaians in their socialist beliefs. Jesus Christ, the biggest socialist, was actually snatched by these so-called capitalists. And they made an icon of him, the Son of God, and whatever it is, a God to be worshipped. And they've completely disregarded the life of Christ and what he stood for, what he did with his time and energy. You get me? Are you sure? Later.